Hey guys, thanks for watching. Before we start the review, just want to remind you to please like, subscribe to my channel. With more subscribers, I can start doing more cookbook reviews and stuff like that, so thanks. Cooking at Home is the latest cookbook written by David Chang and Priya Krishna. If you don't know David Chang, he's the one who started the Momofuku empire and has a lot of shows about food and cooking. You can watch my review of the Momofuku cookbook. David Chang is a controversial guy. I think I'm going to make a video kind of explaining my views on him because I'm very conflicted about him. I do think he's important to the American restaurant industry, but I also think he's a big hothead and someone who doesn't have a great record. Now, Priya Krishna, don't get me started on Priya. Priya is awesome. I love Priya. She's great. Super nice person. She wrote another cookbook called Indianish, recipes about her upbringing in Dallas, Texas as a daughter of Indian American immigrants. David Chang hasn't written a cookbook in over 10 years, so it's kind of interesting to compare this against the Momofuku cookbook. It's almost like an anti-cookbook. On the recipes, there's no measurements. It's all just a glug of soy sauce, a glug of vinegar, just put the meat in to marinate it, cook it till it's the right temperature. The idea behind this book is instead of telling you how to do things and you just memorize how to do that and you never get out of your comfort zone, it's just giving you guidelines on how to cook recipes. This way you can find your salt tolerance yourself, how you prefer to cook yourself. You can eyeball things a lot better. I like the idea of this book, but this isn't the first time a book like this has been written. The New York Times Cooking wrote a book called The No Recipes Recipes, and actually Priya now works at New York Times, so maybe she got an inspiration from this, who knows. In my opinion, the format of this book is executed poorly. It just feels like this book was kind of rushed. This book is kind of recipes that David Chang has worked on, where he created these recipes just eyeballing it and going with the flow, and then telling Priya how to cook these recipes, where she took that and wrote it down in her own words. A lot of these recipes are Japanese, Korean Americans. To me, this is a very David Chang focused book where he took the recipes and then Priya kind of vetted them to see if she could make them herself without any exact measurements. Priya just feels like she's the recipe tester here and she chimes in on tips. I want to say she's at least honest, where David Chang will bring a point saying, oh man, boiled chicken's so much better than roasted chicken. Why would you roast a chicken? And then Priya coming out saying, actually, I prefer roasted chicken. It's very weird to have these two chefs tussle within the writing instead of maybe meeting in the middle of somewhere. That's why it feels like this book is kind of rushed, because it feels like David Chang wrote everything, gave it to Priya, and then didn't look twice at it. Just wanted Priya to change it up or add her opinions. I think the point of this book is to be very unclear, but that is also a hindrance. This book is not only unclear on the recipes, which I think is a unique idea, but it's unclear because there's a lot of rambling, because sometimes you don't know whose voice it is, except the fact that Priya has purple text color and David Chang has black text color, and then sometimes food scientists will come in with a pink text color. It's kind of all over the place. And going back to the food expert test, they have a lot of Q&A sessions with maybe food experts on how to handle frozen food or how to handle meat properly. This can be handy on learning how to home cook. You have to read an entire section of a big blob of text to actually get to the meat and bones of things. I wish maybe they kind of consolidated it down and organized it a little bit better so it was more digestible. I feel like I need a highlighter for this cookbook, which I haven't really needed before. There's also a big emphasis on microwave cooking, and David Chang goes off about how microwave cooking, people are too afraid of it. David Chang obviously hasn't read microwave cooking for one, and doesn't understand that people have been vouching for microwaves forever. He does go over a lot of recipes you can make with microwaves, how you can make rice in the microwave, how you can make rice porridge in the microwave, how you can cook chicken in the microwave and then just sear it in the pan to get a golden color. There is also a small section on fried rice, which is kind of just throw in there, and even they admit that they just threw it in there because they couldn't really find a good spot for fried rice. I did find this section interesting because it is a very short and concise way on cooking fried rice. It has this infograph on how to cook rice, kind of like a choose your own adventure for cooking rice. It feels like a puzzle looking at it. There's just so much to digest there. And it was also weird that during this microwave section, when they're talking about how to microwave chow and mishi, Priya says that the chow and mishi ratio isn't correct, and she came up with her own ratio. And she says you should discover your own ratio, which I feel like this is a cop-out. If David's saying this is the perfect ratio, but then you have to read Priya's subnote saying this isn't the perfect ratio and you should find your own. Kind of what's the point? I get that this book is trying to push you to do your own thing and learn how to cook yourself, but maybe that's not my preference. I do like having concise measurements so I can replicate things easily. Eventually, once I start making a recipe so much, I might add to it or subtract from it. But to give these base recipes and just kind of say, figure out yourself, don't 100% agree with that. But I think there's a better way to do this. There's a book out there called Ratio, which goes over certain ratios in order to make things. These are general guidelines and ratios and ingredients you can use to make dishes, not just very broad sweeping statements. So this is really helpful to get that foundation and then experiment around that foundation. Also, you could just watch an Adam Raguseo video, and he talks about how people are a little bit too stuffy on how you do things, and just apply that concept to your home cooking. I don't think you need to go out and read this book to get that idea. There's also a section on fish, and they talk about how to make sure that the fish is cooked through. He says to use a cake tester, and once the cake tester is warm, then it's done. To me, this feels like one of those hacks that actually makes things more difficult than it really does. I can't see why he can't just suggest getting an instant read thermometer and just knowing the correct temperature of that fish. I feel like it's a lot easier and a lot more precise. There are sometimes some measurements used in this book, like for spices, which kind of makes sense because you have to be careful on how you spice things. It can be very overpowering if you add maybe 1 extra teaspoon. So I'm at least glad they tried a little bit there. Sometimes a recipe will tell you to refer to another recipe. When I looked at one of the brisket recipes, it just told me to refer to page 88, which was just the title page for brisket. To me, like, what was the point of that? I didn't really understand it. Also, it's a little inconsistent on what it refers to or not, because one time on one brisket recipe, it didn't tell me any page to turn to for the brisket broth. But then on another recipe, it gave me the page number, so that feels like an editing mistake. Also, I think David makes some weird claims here just to be contrarian. He talks about how falling off the bone is overdone, which is really weird to me because I wouldn't want smoked pork ribs any other way than falling off the bone. I think he's just trying to say that maybe falling off the bone isn't the only option, but I think just to trash falling off the bone is kind of a weird way to put it. Yeah, so this book is really weird. To me, it feels like they wrote this book when COVID was at its height and they shut down all the restaurants and they just kind of figuring out what they wanted to do. All the pictures in this book are taken with an iPhone. Some of the photos are out of focus, some of the food is burnt. It just felt like this book was almost written in like a week. There are some helpful tips in this book on how to kind of broadly do things, like how to test for doneness of meat, how you should use your freezer as a pantry. Felt like this book was really rushed and written really quickly. I like the concept of the book where cooking at home doesn't have to be as pretty and precise as if cooking at a restaurant. I just don't know if I like the cookbook, but I love the concept. If you want to challenge yourself on how to cook Japanese, Korean, and fusion foods, this might be a good book for you. But for beginners and people who maybe need a little bit of help with cooking, I can't say this is a great book for you. It's someone who just has more skill and kind of knows what they're doing a little bit more. I'm giving this book a 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be giving away this book, so please comment below if you're interested in this book. I'll be posting the results in about a week. Thanks.